applicants are required to ensure on the 31st of October 2025, from the female perspective, that at least 65% of their yearly reference number are eligible females that are genotyped 4 or 5 stars on the replacement index. That's on a within or a crossbreed basis at the time of purchase. That's for replacements bought into the herd, or at the time of genotyping for replacements bred within their own herd.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc beef podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan and I'm joined by Margaret Brennan, Assistant Principal Officer over Beef Schemes with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, to discuss the new dairy beef weighing scheme announced recently and to get an update on all things related to schemes. Margaret, you're very welcome. The 2025 dairy beef weighing scheme is open for applications at the moment.
Yes, the scheme is now open for applications, Catherine. This scheme is basically a reopening of a scheme that we had in previous years, most recently in 2023. So the scheme is there to support farmers who are rearing dairy beef calves on their holding. There's one action under the scheme, and we'll have a chat about that afterwards, but there's only just the weighing action. The scheme has a budget of 4 million and it's for the scheme year 2025.
And which dairy beef animals are eligible for the scheme?
So the eligible animals under the scheme are male calves of a dairy breed and or male or female calves sired by a beef breed born to a dairy dam. So the calves must be born between the 1st of July 2024 and the 30th of June 2025 and registered within 27 days with the department's registration agency. So the calves must be at least 12 weeks old at the time of weighing and be registered on the participant's holding for at least 10 days before the weighing event takes place to be considered eligible.
And which farmers can apply for this scheme, Margaret?
So any farmer who has a herd number is eligible to apply, but they must submit a basic income support for sustainability or BIS application in 2025, and they must undertake the scheme action and comply with the terms and conditions of the scheme to be eligible for payment. So the scheme is accessible to dairy farmers who rear their own calves on their holding, or farmers who buy in these animals and rear them on their holding once they comply with the scheme rules.
And you mentioned earlier there the requirements for the weighing action in the scheme. What is the requirement for farmers?
Yes, so there's only the one action under the scheme, Catherine, as we said. So it's weighing eligible calves and submitting those weights to ICBF within 7 days, but no later than 5:30, so 5:30 p.m. on the 1st of November 2025. So the weights must be with ICBF by that time or date, by 5:30 on the 1st of November 25, irrespective of whether you're doing it online or by post. So ideally, farmers should upload the weights as soon as they weigh the animals. So participants must weigh and submit weights for at least 5 eligible calves to be eligible for payment, and up to a maximum of 50 eligible calves can be paid on per herd. So the farmers must weigh and submit the weights on all animals that they wish to be paid on up to the maximum of 50. For example, if I have 20 eligible calves on my herd, but I only weigh and submit weights for 5 animals, I'll only get paid for 5 animals.
And once the cattle are weighed, how do the farmers record the data that you mentioned online?
So they can go into their ICBF profile, or they can apply for a form to submit by post to submit the weights.
That's great, Margaret. And the payment rate for farmers that apply for the scheme?
Yes, so the rate is €20 per eligible calf, Catherine. So that's up to a maximum of 50 calves in total. So the maximum payment under the scheme is €1,000. However, it is very important to note that it's subject to weighing a minimum of 5 calves. So if a participant only weighs 5 calves and submits the weights for 4 calves and submits the weights for 4 calves, then they won't be eligible for any payment under the scheme. So it must be a minimum of 5 calves.
How can farmers apply for the scheme?
So farmers who apply can apply themselves through Ag Food, or if they have an FAS advisor authorised to act on their behalf, they can submit an application for them through agfood.ie. So it's using the Ag Scheme's Expression of Interest application. So once they go into that application, they can select National Dairy Beef Weighing Scheme from the drop-down menu. So the application is very simple, with the applicant required to read the declarations presented on screen. And once they satisfy themselves that they can comply with the declarations, they tick each one. So once all the declarations are ticked, they click on the Submit button. And they'll get a pop-up screen then at that stage asking them to confirm if they're happy to proceed. And once this is clicked yes, their application status will be shown as submitted. So it's really important for anyone who wishes to apply that they ensure that they click the submit button, otherwise their application won't be submitted.
That's great, Margaret. And just finally, just to remind, what is the closing date again for that scheme?
Yes, so the scheme closes for applications at midnight on the 15th of May 2025. So it's in line with the BIS closing date. So there is a 25 calendar day window after that date for late applications. That's up to Monday, the 9th of June. But late applications are subject to a 1% penalty per working day. So applications after the 9th of June won't be accepted. So it's important. We'd urge everyone to get their application in before the 15th of May if possible, so that they're not subject to any late application penalties.
Moving on to the Suckler Carbon Efficiency Programme, also known as SCEP, 2025 is a very important year for farmers that are involved in this scheme.
It is indeed. So applicants are required to ensure on the 31st of October 2025, from the female perspective, that at least 65% of their yearly reference number are eligible females that are genotyped 4 or 5 stars on the replacement index. That's on a within or a crossbreed basis at the time of purchase. That's for replacements bought into the herd, or at the time of genotyping for replacements bred within their own herd. So it's important that farmers are familiar with what their reference number is for the 2025 scheme year, so that they can decide how many eligible females they actually need on that 31st of October 25. So an eligible female, just for farmers that are wondering whether their females are eligible or not, they will get a report from the ICBF confirming their eligibility for females over the coming weeks. But also, it's an eligible female is one that's a beef bred female who's at least 16 months old on the 31st of October 25. That's genotyped 4 or 5 stars on the replacement index at the time of purchase or at the time of type of genotyping. So an eligible female is a beef bred female who's at least 16 months old on the 31st of October 25. That's genotyped 4 or 5 stars on the replacement index at the time of purchase or at the time of genotyping for those females that are bred within the herd.
So now is a really important time, Margaret, to look at the reference number for the herd, as farmers may have changed that number since they started in SCEP, and they need to decide how many eligible females that they need for the 31st of October 2025 deadline, because it is possible that cows that don't go in calf this breeding season, they might be culled by the 31st of October, and that can cause issues for farmers meeting that 65% figure. So that's really important this time of year. Are there any other key dates that farmers need to be aware of for SCEP?
Yeah, so just a couple of important things on the eligibility to remain in SCEP. So farmers should ensure that they continue their SPLAS, their Board BIA SPLAS membership for the duration of their SCEP participation. They should ensure that they calve down a minimum of 50% of their year 3 reference number between the 1st of July 24 and the 30th of June 25. So make sure that they've calved down enough animals to meet their 50% of their yearly reference number. Now that 50%, Catherine, is a minimum. They should try and aim to be above that figure to assist them in complying with the other action requirements of the scheme as well. It's also important, as we said, that they submit a valid BIS for 2025 and that they declare all eligible parcels. So those 3 things, so the S Plus membership, calving down 50% and submitting a BIS application for 2025, they're all the important things that they need to be aware of to remain in SCEP. So if they didn't reply, if somebody didn't comply with those, they could potentially be removed from the programme and have any monies recouped from them. But in order to maximise their payment, so once they've met the bar and all those, that to maximise their payment, they should also ensure that they carry out the actions of the programme by the required dates. For example, the eligible female, that they submit their genotyping by the 30th of November, that they submit their weights under SCEP by the 1st of November, that they comply with the requirements for 4 or 5 star sires for their calves, and also that they submit their traits by the 15th of February 2026 in respect of those calves born in scheme year 3. And another important thing just to mention, when farmers are at this time preparing to put together their BIS application, that they should be mindful that they ensure they claim enough eligible forage lands to make sure they meet their maximum payable area under their SCEP requirement. If they fall below 80%, they aren't eligible for payment in that scheme year. So it's important to ensure that they have enough eligible forage land to meet their SCEP requirement to be eligible for payment in SCEP in 2025.
Some key dates there, Margaret, for SCEP for farmers to be aware of. You mentioned there the BIS application form. So the deadline for farmers to get their BIS application form is quickly approaching.
Yes, it is indeed. So applications for BIS, Catherine, must be submitted by midnight on Thursday, the 15th of May 25. It's an eligibility requirement for BIS schemes that all BISs must be submitted in 2025. So for those farmers, also another few key dates are for farmers who have dairy calves born in their holding and who didn't apply for the CAP Strategic Plan Dairy Beef Welfare Scheme last year. They also have an opportunity to join the scheme for 25, 26 and 27 going forward. So applications for that will be opening in the next few weeks, and we'll notify through the normal media and channels the date that that's opened. But the closing date for that will also be the 15th of May 2025. It's to keep all those dates and lines to make it easier for farmers, so it's just one date to recall. The terms and conditions for that scheme will also be available then on the CSP Dairy Beef Welfare Scheme page on the department's website.
Finally, Margaret, when is the National Beef Welfare Scheme for 2025? When is that proposed to open for applications?
So that scheme, Catherine, is targeted to open in the summer. So it would be in line with the dates that scheme opened in 24 and 23. So around that time in the summer, the department then will announce the details of that, the opening and closing dates, and that at a later date.
Thanks very much, Margaret. Some key dates are the deadline for the dairy weighing scheme is the 15th of May, as is the deadline for BIS, the 15th of May. Farmers participating in SCEP, they're required that by the 31st of October to have at least 65% of their yearly reference number that they are eligible. They are genotyped 4 or 5 stars on the replacement index. Thanks very much, Margaret.
Thanks, Catherine.
That's all for this week's episode. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan and thanks for listening.